Welcome back to Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm MommaFoxFire, and today's episode is a blast from the past recorded way back in 2021. We're diving into a topic that is both gritty and incredibly important, and that's poverty, disability, advocacy, and game development related to those things. We often hear sanitized narratives about overcoming adversity, but today we're getting pretty real. We're pulling back the curtain on the complexities of navigating life with disabilities in a system that often feels designed to trip you up rather than lift you up. My guest today, Rene Joy, brings a wealth of experience and passion to the table. She's not just talking about these issues, she has lived them. And her journey is a testament to resilience, creativity, and an unyielding commitment to making meaningful change in the world. In this episode, you'll hear Rene's personal insights into how her own experiences with poverty and with disability have shaped her advocacy work. She doesn't hold back as she shares these challenges she has faced and the victories she celebrated along the way. We'll also dive into Rene's innovative project, Budgets and Benefits, which is a game designed to empower individuals with disabilities to navigate the labyrinth of social services and advocate for themselves effectively. It's a, pun intended, game changer because it not only educates, but it also empowers players with the tools they need to navigate bureaucratic hurdles. Beyond the game development, this episode is about dismantling misconceptions. Rene tackles head-on the myths surrounding disability benefits and sheds light on what true advocacy looks like in practice. It's not just about raising awareness, it's about demanding systemic change that respects and supports every individual's right to dignity and autonomy. Whether you're personally impacted by these issues or just curious about how you can be a better ally, stick around for this conversation. Rene's story will challenge your perceptions, inspire your advocacy spirit, and maybe even spark some ideas for how you can make a difference in your own community. As always, I encourage you to come find me on social media, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Your voice matters, and together we can create a more inclusive and compassionate world. But that's enough from me. Let's get to it. Grab your favorite cup of tea or a glass of wine, find a cozy spot, and join me in this enlightening conversation with Rene Joy here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. Everyone, and welcome to another Mental Health Monday. I'm really excited for today. We have a wonderful guest tonight to talk about poverty, disability, advocacy, and game development, which I'm super excited to talk about the game development piece of it because I want to hear all about your game. But joining us tonight is Rene Joy. Pronouns are she and they, as you can see on the top up here. And Rene is a writer, peer specialist, game developer who transforms lived experiences into actionable learning opportunities that respond directly to the systems that support or suppress vulnerable people and their communities. A Florida born and raised mom of teens and too many cats, Rene's work evolved from personal advocacy efforts that then led into consultancy for organizational development in support of neurodivergency, disability, and anti-poverty issues at large. She describes her own mental health recovery as a multifaceted, fluid process that she loves sharing with others one-on-one and in group settings, and believes strongly in self-determined recovery models and that new paths to a recovery-oriented life are discovered every day, and we discover them better together. I have some socials for you, more info for you. I've got their Hey Peers, their website, her TikTok, Twitter, and Patreon. So give me just a second to post those in here, and I will just say, Rene, thank you for being here tonight.
She decided to come get right on camera with me at the very start. She said, I heard the introductions. We didn't mention my name. This is my friend Fitz right now.
Yes. We have a question queue. If you have any questions as we're going along, type the exclamation point, the letter Q, and pop those into the chat, and we'll make sure to ask them. Bite Mark says, hello, and is there really such a thing as too many cats? So we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. But before we get there, can you tell us a little more about what you do and what made you become interested in specializing in this peer support and advocacy space?
Yeah, so I found out about peer support work as a profession probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And I said, hey, that's great. I can't seem to not talk about my mental health and my trauma, and I can't seem to figure out how to manage a job that works with the kind of care that I need. And it's a full-time job for me to take care of myself as it is, and the members of my family. So when I found out about peer support work and how it's structured, in most cases, I decided I really needed to get involved with that, get involved with it as a theory and as a practice. And so now that's what I do. And basically, peer support work began out of the mutual aid mental health consumer movement, and started as a way for clients and patients of institutionalized health to advocate for their needs and advocate for client-informed care. And it's developed over the decades since then to something that spans, I think, a lot of uses from the strictly clinical behavioral healthcare setting to the more organizational, structural, how to get along with your coworkers kind of applications. And you'll find me ping-ponging around that spectrum every which way I can. I find the work very meaningful, and I'm really glad to be in a space that supports it and to bring support to your space as well. So thanks.
Yeah, that's I'm always interested in hearing how people got to where they are, and what they're doing, especially in the mental health space, because everyone has a reason, everyone has a story for doing what they do. And it's nice that you come from kind of that personal experience and you're bringing that to other people. I think that that's really, really neat. So we'll go ahead and jump back to Bite's question. And so how many cats is too many? And what is it that you love about cats? And is there anything that you don't love about cats?
So in a philosophical answer, there is no such thing as too many cats. In a practical answer, it's how much literal shit are you willing to put up with? That's and right now I'm in way over my head because I have my own household cats, and then it's kitten season 2021, and I recently moved into a neighborhood that has a cat colony that's a bit out of control. So I've fostered kittens many times before. I've opened up my house to fostering kittens for the season, and I'm at critical mass for the critical masses that are dropping from them on the daily. That's my practical answer. But philosophically, there is no such thing as too many cats. And I think what I love about cats is their unique personalities, even if they all have a lot of common traits or, very cat things that they do. Each cat really has subtle nuances that make them a very unique person. And then something that I definitely struggle to like about cats is that same kind of thing where they're kind of so quirky you don't really know what's going on with them sometimes. And
yeah,
I lost a cat this weekend. Ooh. And I wish that I could have picked up on her subtle needs much better. And so that's what I'll say. It's just tough to love cats. They're wonderful, wonderful, beautiful creatures, and also wonderfully mysterious. And
yeah,
sometimes, that just means that you really can't take care of them in the way that they need. So that was the problem for my poor Joe, in that she had been a foster failure from my first attempt at fostering kittens many years ago, and had chronic health issues that aged her, unfortunately, too fast. And when we moved into this, area with everything going on, and just moves can really make cats change their behavior patterns. And no matter what, you do sometimes, if you can't get a cat to get comfortable again, then they kind of will just lose interest in taking care of themselves until it's a little too late. And I gotta say, that's the one thing about loving cats as much as I do that kind of winds up biting you in the butt, which you're a friend of the feline as well, so I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I said this before, but I am truly sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry. I mean, I know that a lot of people, they see like, oh, it's just a pet. Like, no, it's a family member, right? It's, I feel that way about all of my pets. They're family members. So, I'm sorry that you just went through that.
Well, and I can never let a good pun escape, considering I'm a peer support specialist, and they're my per support specialist.
Yes.
So.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Bite Mark also asks, what is your favorite poem?
Ooh, I saw this question coming in ahead of time, and I'm really grateful for it. I actually love poetry as a writer. I'm very rules based, except for when it comes to poetry. That's when I feel like all the rules get to really be broken in very interesting ways. So I will not do the self-centered thing and pick one of my own poems, though. I will pick a
You
poem.
totally could if you wanted.
Thank you for the invitation. I've got my chat book right back there. But what I will read is one of my favorite poems that I just stumbled across in another book somewhere. It wasn't even a poetry book. It was just somebody translated a poem that they liked. So this one is by Robert Desnos. Is it okay if I read it out loud?
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay,
please.
So, excuse me. Robert Desnos, I have dreamed so much. I have dreamed you so much that you no longer feel real. Is there still time to reach your living body and to kiss your mouth, cradle of the voice I love best? I have dreamed you so much that my arms, used to holding your shadow across my chest, might no longer reach around the shape of your body, and that before the haunting that's ruled me days and years, I'd surely become a shadow too. And oh, the calculations of my heart. I've dreamed you so much that it might be too late to wake. I sleep standing, my body exposed to all manifestations of life and love for you, the only things that count for me today. But I can less touch your face and your lips than the first lips, the first face to come my way. I have dreamed you so much, walked, talked, slept with your ghost so much, that there may be nothing left to do than to become a ghost among ghosts, and a shadow 100 times more shadow than the one who wanders around the sundial of your life.
Wow. That's a great one. What's the name of that one?
I have dreamed you so much, and it's originally written in French, so you'll find a lot of different translations, and that's just one of my favorites. So.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, I love that.
Thanks for asking the question.
That is her top favorite question to ask people on these Monday streams is what's your favorite poem? We've gotten, I don't know that we've gotten the same one twice. I mean, it's been such a wide exposure to a bunch of different things that personally I never would have read. Probably I never would have heard that one if you hadn't brought it up. So
favorite.
Yeah. So what's one of my favorites? So so my favorite, I actually have a command for this because I always forget the link and I always forget the name, and so I cheated and put in a command for the one that I like, but it's the Don't Kill Yourself Today by Hannah Danes. And I don't know that I can read it out loud without crying. But
I was like stimming myself so that I could.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, but it starts off, so the first line is don't kill yourself today because your Netflix free trial still has a week left. Don't kill yourself today because no one else will finish off the chicken in the fridge. And it just goes through and it's like, yeah, you're going to be missed. Yes, your friends will be sad. Like everyone knows it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Like all of those are the things that people say. But it's like, whatever reason you need to pick, just make it to tomorrow. Like, because you want a pumpkin spice latte. Like those are all, and it goes, I mean, it's a decently long poem. But it's by Hannah Danes. Yep. Hannah Danes, Don't Kill Yourself Today. That's my favorite one. There's a link in the chat if anyone wants to go read the whole thing, because I seriously can't read it without crying. So, but that one's a great one. And Bite said, I just like poetry. I feel like a person's favorite poem shows a lot about them. I agree with that.
favorite poem.
What is your favorite poem? See, I think we've talked about this before, but my brain is full of things that I don't remember until they are brought up again. So, listen to the Mustn'ts. I did know that. I did know that. That's a good one. So it's a Shel Silverstein one, and it's I'll find a link to it. I think it's on Goodreads.
Oh, yep. I've got a screen over here that I'm tippity typing away on
yes.
for myself, and then, yeah, of course you can give it to your the chat who needs the stuff.
Yeah,
I can't see the chat, so it doesn't exist to me. You have to keep prompting and reminding me that there are people out there.
No, it's all good. So this one is a short one, and I don't have a problem reading this one. Listen to the mustn'ts, child. Listen to the don'ts. Listen to the shouldn'ts, the impossibles, the won'ts. Listen to the never haves, then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be. And so that one,
but I might not. That's so good.
I love that one. Here, I'll put this. It's not on Goodreads. I forgot Goodreads doesn't give you like all the words to everything, but so yeah, it's that one. So what do you like to do for fun, and also what do you like to do for self-care?
Like to do all kinds of messy arts and crafts, and drink all kinds of teas and coffees, and eat all kinds of pastries. That is like the perfect little moment for me, to make me happy, with good tunes on the radio as well.
Absolutely.
So anytime that I can break away and paint or make or sketch or just play with arts and crafts of some kind. I made, oh no, thankfully he's too far out of reach. I go live on my TikTok every now and then, and in order to remind me that I have the camera on, I made a fuzzy little character to put on my phone. just as you do. So that's what I do for fun. And then for self-care, so much of what I do for self-care is probably, I don't know that it sounds like self-care, but I really need the reciprocity of like community time for self-care. I think a lot of people think like self-care, let me go be alone and do something. I need a lot of alone time. But I wouldn't call alone time self-care. That's survival.
Yeah.
That's, I think I actually would like to be around people at all times, but because I cannot survive that, I have to go away sometimes. So for me, self-care is getting to sort of like parallel play with others, like body double with others, while we're just doing our own things. And getting to nap with cats is also a big self-care move for me as well. So
yeah, I love that.
Do you got anything? If anybody's got anything to throw into that mix that's in that vibe set, like give it to me. I need that.
So Tyrion sleeps on my bed. And he used to sleep like right next to my face on my pillow, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and his fur would be basically in my mouth, and he's a long-haired cat, so I'd have to push him off. And I just got a wedge pillow, and he hasn't figured out what the hell to do with it. So he's like, I can't sleep on a wedge pillow. What are you thinking? Like, this is not, get this out of my space. But he's figured out that he can like cuddle right next to my boob, like in my armpit, kind of, depending on how my arm is. And he likes that quite a bit. So I'll wake up frequently with just this hot little cat body right next to me. Yes, napping with cats is great.
I have one cat in particular. My newest of my house cats is also a kitten rescue from this season. I just rescued him from being stuck in a concrete, planter, crying for his life, right?
Oh, so my gosh.
The universe gave me a baby. I have to keep him. And so,
obviously.
Yeah, right. So I attribute this way of rescuing him as the reason why he likes to be squeezed and pressed in blankets as tight and as hard as he can. So there are now like weighted blanket sensory naps with me and a cat, like where we both just need to be like swaddled as tightly as we can. And
Oh, that's
pretty great to have
awesome. I like that.
Anyway, I could talk about this could be a cat question. I could segue this into a cat answer at every opportunity, just so we all know.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that. Absolutely. Hopefully not this next one though. So the next one hopefully is not about cats. But do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you?
I have a fascination with true crime fascination that I don't quite understand, and that I'm trying to explore. In that I've caught myself having the knee-jerk reaction of being very not snooty about it, but like, don't exploit people by having like serial killer stories and true crime stories or what have you. You know, don't do that. That's not nice. But at the same time, I understand the power of storytelling as a way of advocating for change and as a way of making people understand nuances that they will not understand, even if they're reading the most like evidence-based journal report ever, you know? So even though I don't find myself connecting to that method of storytelling as a way of gaining information that is like a viable way of gaining information for me, I'm listening to them. Some of it hits a little too close to home because of how many family members I've had or that have been a victim of a heinous crime or have committed a heinous crime. It's a little too intense for me to be able to process story in that way. But I want to make sure that I'm not like diminishing the need for that storytelling power. I do think there's probably a lot of ways the community can correct itself in how it approaches it, but that's for them to do, you know, with maybe the informed others to help them. I'm not involved enough to even speak on that. But I will say too that I've also caught myself maybe slipping into internalized misogyny about it. You know, like true crime stories, and a lot of that nowadays is very much woman-coded kind of entertainment, or there's just so much about what women enjoy that immediately gets shit upon that I don't want to just like add to that. So I'm really careful to place my perspective in a really personal perspective and not attach it to like the larger discourse around, is it good, is it bad, is it exploitative, is it not exploitative?
Yeah.
There's no way to simplify that kind of read of it. So I remain fascinated by the power of its storytelling capacity and try to learn from how people are trying to really honor victims and honor the voices of the marginalized people, so that when I'm approaching the work that I do, I'm a white woman talking about welfare. It's very dangerous for me to be doing this work if I'm not doing it very consciously and very well. I can really do a lot of damage if I'm not being aware of the way in which I can characterize other people just by writing some words in a really interesting way. Stories can be very compelling, whether or not they're true or good or helpful. So I want to make true, good, helpful, compelling stories. And so, yeah, I'm really glad for the question. My first reaction to it was like, oh, I don't know, I'm not really into it. But then I'm like, ooh, better check myself.
Well, and not everyone is, right? Not everyone is into watching things like I Survived or listening to a true crime podcast or even watching something that's story driven, like Criminal Minds or something like that. I think it's really, really neat to just look at the mind behind and what was in their past. And I think that a lot of the stories of trauma can become shared stories of trauma, not only from the like, here's what happened to these victims of these people and the shared community trauma whenever it's a serial killer type situation, but I think also the what that individual went through, right? What that person went through that got them to where they were. In some cases, it wasn't any sort of different background, but in a lot of cases, like you can see this is what happened. This was critical in their childhood. This is how they got to where they were. That doesn't make it okay, but like, here's some things, and just the kind of the psychology behind it is really interesting. But more than that, I think that especially things like I Survived, especially that show, it gives you that power of you're right, of the storytelling, of being able to say, like, this is this one person's story, and this is what happened to them, and kind of share in that, which I think is really neat.
Yeah. And I want to this reminds me, I did watch the one and only season we got of Mindhunter, right? Is
Oh
that the name of
yes,
it? With what's his face? The
yes.
guy who's like a young Carrie Elwes. I can't remember his name
I
now.
don't remember his name either, but yes, that was a good
Yeah, yeah.
show.
So, there's just a very unfortunate reality of kittens in my lap who are farting. I'm sorry.
Understand.
Oh, God. Oh, if I'm pulling faces, not the conversation. So, I'm really interested in the history of how we've developed profiling around criminalizing traumatic, traumatized people, and whether or not they were born with something or, became impacted by something in their life. These are all things that are potential realities for all of us.
Yeah.
And the lack of care that we experience in America is very deep and is really at, I think, a root cause, generationally speaking. In many of these cases, there are root causes about where the system of care has failed families for generations, that leave us with human beings that have been so dehumanized to the point that they would dehumanize others the way that they do.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but I mean, I can't watch it though. I can't watch it.
That's
a lot.
okay.
I can't watch a lot of it.
Yeah, that's okay. Scarlet Lady said, I love Mindhunter, and Angel said, I was looking at a picture of him whenever you said that name. So there you go. You're on the same wavelength here.
Yeah.
So you've had personal experiences with both disabilities and poverty, from, as you put it, precocious childhood into precarious adulthood, which I love that phrasing. Like, it paints a picture. That really paints a picture. What has that been like for you?
So I grew up with a family that had experienced a lot of deep poverty. We hear a lot about the like Appalachian coal mining kind of realities that some of the folks have experienced. Sorry, I'm losing my track. Let me get back. So I grew up with stories like that, and grew up with a lot of poverty in different families splitting up and moving and getting bounced around to different houses and things like that. All of it in Florida in particular, which of the states has had some pretty terrible policies that have left a lot of families in really dire situations, decade after decade. So with that, especially having grown up in the 80s, I was born in 1980. We had major welfare reform happen in 1996. So being a child that would have benefited from welfare in the way it was prior to 1996, and then welfare and what it looked like after 1996, left me in a pretty big lurch in terms of what my parents had access to in terms of support for me, and then what that kind of support even looked like when you got it. It was usually pretty punitive. So I was a very outspoken child, lots of misbehavior in school, a lot of unmet needs due to the family trauma that I experienced. And so I just got into trouble a lot. And the answer for that was to assume it was, hey, you are a smart enough girl, you must know what you're doing. So if you know what you're doing and you continue to do these things, the only thing that's going to correct it is if we just, keep grounding you, keep punishing you, keep, doing whatever we need to do. And that led eventually to lots of rehab and hospitalizations and, running away. And then as an adult, I was carrying all of that trauma and all of those experiences with me, all of that really poor system of care. and how it was impacting me. And I wasn't able to hold a job down. I mean, I would show up for a job and have what I now understand to be a very internalized panic attack, and then just walk out, like in the middle of
Wow.
changing money with somebody at the register. I would like feel very disassociated and just be like, okay, well, I'm now done experiencing life doing this and whatever's happening. And so I would put the money down and just walk away. Job after job, things like that would happen. And so eventually, as a parent experiencing these things, and having children experiencing a lot of the similar issues that I did, the schools kind of will get family help through the children's behavioral needs. Like that's how it works nowadays. Back when I was in school, they didn't do interventions like that like they do now. So nowadays, and it can go really poorly too. I don't mean to say that the way that they do interventions now works out. There are reasons why, for me in my case, it was a benefit. I mean, there are a lot of realities in my life that don't fall under some very stigmatizing or stereotyped rules and standards within the system of care. So for me, it's not as damaging of an experience sometimes for them to just sort of intervene in my life and help me out.
Yeah.
And so that's what we experienced. We experienced a lot of trauma and a lot of difficulty that bounced us in and out of the school system. And through that, we finally got connected with care, or as an adult, I finally got connected with care through Medicaid. But once I was on Medicaid, it was like, okay, now I can't get off again. If I get off of Medicaid and lose my access to all of this healthcare that I now have, I did all the right things. I did what y'all told me to do to be a better parent and a better human being. I went to all the doctors, got all the medication, went to all the therapies, went to all the group things. I'm doing all these right things. But if I lose my Medicaid in Florida, the gap that exists because they didn't expand Medicaid from the ACA would mean that I would be without all of my doctors, all of my medications, all of my access to care and everything else that I needed, and my children too. So that's what ended up spurring me so hardcore into trying to make system changes that do something more than just barely keep us together and barely keep us going. And so that's kind of what brings me to my present day over the past few years. It's been a lot of just, reworking that process, reworking my recovery, and having to stay poor in order to stay healthy in the state of Florida. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's an awful reality, and it's unfortunately, I wish I could say it's just Florida, but I live in Texas, and it's not just Florida.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I wish I would have actually looked at. I think I might have known that, but if you're in Texas, you absolutely are dealing with some of those same things that I would say have a systemic or a regional generational impact. We are very much touched by some of the worst possible cases of that. Whatever it is I'm theorizing about that. Texas and Florida are.
I know. I know, it's unfortunate. It's such a reality for a lot of people. I think a lot of people don't actually understand that there is such a large gap between what you can qualify for with Medicaid and what you can actually use to support yourself without Medicaid. And if you're in between that gap, you're just fucked. I mean, there's not another way to do any of that. It's so frustrating to be in a space like that. It's awful. And a lot of people are just like, oh, just work harder. Like, okay.
Well, and in the case of Florida and in the case of these states that didn't expand, our income limits, like in Texas and in Florida in particular, the income limits for parents of qualifying children, which is the only way you can get Medicaid if you're an adult in those states. You can't get it unless you have children, and your children have to qualify. So parents of qualifying children, our income limits in Florida are stuck at 1996 levels because of the way those laws worked.
Yeah.
So every year, the gap actually gets incrementally larger because it's going to fix it. Where I have to be poor by the standard of a $1996, not even by the standard of a $2021.
Right.
Well,
Right.
how? So
Yep.
yeah, and then right now, because of the pandemic, for as long as the state of emergency lasts, there's a waiver that allows me to keep my Medicaid even if I earn over the limit. So
Mm-hmm.
I had a very rare chance this past year to try and like whack-a-mole that like attempt to try and increase my income significantly enough to make it over a welfare cliff fast enough before the state of emergency runs out and the Medicaid waiver, goes away.
Yeah.
It hasn't quite happened.
Right.
Hasn't quite happened, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't sure of the limits for Texas, so I just looked it up real quick, and it looks like regular Medicaid, the income limit for a single person is $794 a month, and with a $2,000 asset limit.
That I can tell is that's actually they'll only get that if they qualify for SSI, because that's the SSI payment amount.
Okay.
It's $795 is the max amount that you'll get for SSI. So they're saying you can't have more money than your SSI check. And what was it? The $2,000 limit is an SSI limit, and that hasn't changed since the 1980s. That's
just crazy for me. I mean, so they've got annual household limits before taxes. For a household size of 2, it's $34,000 income per year. That's actually higher than I was thinking it was going to be. For households with more than 8 people. Okay, so I mean, it does go, they add more income for more people, which is great, but it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
For one person, it's $25,000. You can't make more than $25,000 a year. That's absolutely batty. I mean, Secret Lady Spider. What? That's someone I follow on Twitter. I am so sorry, Scarlett. I don't know why I just looked over at your name. I looked over at your name and it says Scarlet Lady, and right under it says sadly. And so I was like, I put those together somehow in my head. I don't know what I just did. Scarlet Lady said the school being involved never went well for me, sadly, and it never went well for us either, unfortunately. Right. But for some people, it is truly helpful. I have a coworker.
You know what I mean? Like, I could talk some kind of language they needed me to talk. I could freaking talk it to them. And I would know different from all of my other friends or whatever when they would be like, I wish you could be in the room with me and do whatever it is that you were doing, because that didn't happen for me. And I would be like, no, it's right here in this paper. If you just take it in there and you tell them. But I grew up with a trial lawyer grandpa to argue with,
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily great for me either. But because when I'm arguing as a not trial lawyer, as if I am a trial lawyer, I get hung up on very quickly. But yeah, that's what I recognize is if you can kind of like pass as educated and neurotypical enough, you can really push your way through a lot of red tape in this system.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I have used that let me speak to your manager energy on a welfare call,
Yeah.
That and it's terrible.
Right. I mean, also you have to get them on your side too. Like, you have to use that, like, let me talk to the right person part of it. But then also once you're at the right person, you have to be like, help me help you. Like, let's figure out what is it that you need that is going to also help me. Which is hard sometimes to get the right person because those people are overworked as hell. I mean, it's crazy.
Overworked, underpaid,
Yes. Yes.
And And the way that our poverty measures go, they are probably making just enough to not qualify for the very programs they would really realistically benefit for.
I never thought of it that way, but you are absolutely right.
The level of resentment that happens on the other side of the line, because they're doing their level best, but they're not gonna get the benefit, you know?
That's probably exactly true. Bite says, which is dumb because the things that you need to get out of poverty. Yes. Yeah. Like a reliable car. Exactly. Right. You have to make more to get more. And it's just that gap. If there weren't such a gap, like that's the problem, is the gap in between what is livable and what is qualifying. And that gap in between is just, sorry about you.
Yeah.
It's awful. Laugh for Purpose says, I would really like to see EBT or SNAP be more direct. What I mean is let necessities be able, like toilet paper, soap, shampoo, etc., and maybe not let candy and other stuff be allowed to make up for it. Just my opinion. What do y'all think of that? So, I'll put an opinion out there, and this is my probably conservative upbringing, even though I'm not conservative now. Get out of my business. Give me what I need to live and let me figure out how to live it. Because you need the necessities, you need the toilet paper, you need the soap, you need the shampoo. But if your kid wants a candy bar and there's one time that you want to buy them a candy bar, you should be able to, even if you are living below the poverty threshold. It's something that a lot of people might see as a threshold, or not a threshold, like some people might see as a luxury. And it might be a luxury, maybe, but you're not going to go buy an Apple iPhone with it, like a candy bar, something you're going to get on EBT or SNAP that's going to qualify under that. Could mean the world to some little kid who gets their favorite candy bar at the grocery store. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm pretty far on that side with you. And that comes from some of the advocacy that I do around how we get the rules and regulations that we have now. We inherited a lot from the Victorian Poor Laws, and that inherited a lot from consumption laws. And consumption laws come from the rich people telling poor people what they can't wear and eat or have because you can't look like us unless you actually are us. And so that's not what anybody is saying these days when they're talking about this issue. But we have to be careful to not reinforce what's the undercurrent of our system here. So much of that minutia policing would waken that beast in so many other ways that it's not worth it to like fight the battle on Skittles and cake when it comes to SNAP. I do agree that some type of supplement for household items would be very, very beneficial. And if our TANF system, the temporary aid for needy families, wasn't such a complete fucking shit show, people would actually have like a little bit of cash in addition to their EBT benefit. It all goes on the same card. But TANF is a broken shit show. So, that often doesn't happen. Now, in some states whose Medicaid providers are like these third-party kind of insurers who are just contracted to offer Medicaid through their insurance plan. So that's most states these days. Like mine is Stay Well, Florida, and they're contracted to give me my Medicaid the way they do. So a lot of those people now a lot of those insurers will do things like give you an over-the-counter allowance. So my Medicaid will give me a $35 over-the-counter allowance. I log into their online ordering portal and I order $35 worth of personal care products that includes things like diapers, hygiene, toothpaste, shampoo. It can even include mobility aids like walkers and canes, shower stall handles, and other things like that. It's not a great solution because it's a patch on a problem. But if you're in a state and you do get Medicaid, most people don't realize that they might have something like an over-the-counter benefit in addition to their prescription coverage. So I just always tell people, double check, call them up, say, do I have an over-the-counter benefit? And, just keep asking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll say, so whenever I had my oldest, I was on WIC, which is Women, Infants, Children in Texas. I don't know if that's everywhere, but, and that was very restrictive. I could buy cheese.
Yeah.
I could buy milk. I could buy like 2 different kinds of cereal. And there were some like baby formula, and I don't even remember what else. I mean, they're 14 years old, so it's been a long time. But it was very, very restrictive. And the problem that I have with that is that I got up to the counter, and what I wound up doing myself, well, I would get up to the counter whenever I first got on WIC, and I would have to set out 2 separate things and be like, I want to pay for this stuff with my WIC card, which is like a card of shame, right? And then I want to pay for this stuff with my regular debit card because I can't put them together. I think now you actually can put them together and it'll just take it off with the WIC card. But
hold on, you had cards. I was still rocking paper.
Yes. Yeah. No. I had a card. It was issued by the state.
Yeah.
And it was like a very, I think it was a white card, had like a red little thing on it, but, and, there were times whenever I had the paper, though, where it was like, here's your voucher for milk. Here's your voucher for. So I think it must have been like I started with the paper and then it went to the card probably at the very end of my eligibility period. That's probably what happened. But yeah, and it was just one of those things where it was shameful, to have to separate the things out, the things that I was allowed to get help for versus the things that I wanted, like things like pads and tampons weren't included in that. So if I had to go buy pads and tampons, I had to separate it. Like that's what had to happen. And it was, it adds that element of like, just awful feeling for you, awful feeling for the cashier, awful feeling for anyone behind you in line. Like it's just this awful thing all the way around. And so to have it where you're like, well, you can't get this and you can't get that. I think the biggest problem with that is just that then you're putting this element of shame on people who are probably already feeling a little bit of that. I mean, honestly, that's probably a little bit already there without having to separate things out like that. Bitemark said what I think is universal basic income studies have been done, and giving people just money with no restrictions does way more to help them out of poverty than restricting it. Yep. And Scarlett said poverty has been put akin to criminal, and limit anything enjoyable because they are poor. Yes. And a coffee or a candy bar never kept me poor. Yeah.
So the other, I think I want to comment 2 ways on that. So first, the other piece of food stamp history is that it was not originated as a way to help feed poor people. It was originated as a way to make sure farmers in the Depression who couldn't sell their food didn't lack for customers. So it came about because they saw bread rotting and people hungry, and they're like, wow, like it sucks that these people don't have money to buy this bread. Instead of thinking something like, it sucks that, why don't we just give this food to people? They were like, why don't we just find a way to like give them money so they can go buy the food so that the farmers can. So if we want to kind of follow the spirit of the program, we kind of want the benefit to be spent on any kind of food production so that it keeps our food producers producing food. Now we can then say, ooh, it should only be spent on like maybe whole foods for like our agriculture producers. And to that end, many places now participate in what's called fresh access bucks, where if you go to farmers markets with your EBT card, they'll match you dollar for dollar up to $40. Right now, some aren't even limiting it. And it's to help kind of reclaim the benefit to go back into like farm food producers rather than like Skittles and and what have you. And so that's something that like I would love to get more behind myself, but again, then it comes the luxury of having time to prepare raw whole foods into regular meals that feed a whole family that you're not sweating over every single day. Maybe I could like mill my locally grown flour into a cake, but I don't know. Have y'all ever had a Publix cake though? Like a Publix cake that you can buy on food stamps is so good. But yeah, so there's that piece of it as well that, I mean, realistically, most of the people who are complaining about food stamps would actually, if they kind of like thought about the history of it and thought about it from the perspective of a market-friendly practice or whatever it is they might like, would be like, oh, okay, no rules. We give everybody, $500 of food-only money to go and spend on food-only things every single month or whatever it is. They would probably buy into it a whole lot more if they kind of could like click the little clickies a little.
Yeah.
But that leads me into saying the next thing, which is I do believe there should be universal basic income. Absolutely. What I caution when I'm asked as a consultant about these things, what I caution is that in our current climate, to put all of one person's resources into one program, they're going to be impacted poorly by the tug of war that would go on for decades between how these programs get reckoned.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's an unfortunate reality that I can't necessarily throw all my weight behind most UBI ideas, because I'm like, oh, wait a minute though. Do you guys understand? Like, many people that support the SNAP program support keeping it very separate because it's not part of the usual welfare roles and rules and regulations. It's part of the Farm Bill because, again, it's about helping farmers. So they're like super glad it gets hidden in the Farm Bill every year, because then it doesn't get like attacked like Medicaid and Social Security and everything like that. They're super glad that it's like tucked away and as a separate program, which is a strategy move on a game board that that's what you realize happens when the rules are broken. That's a move you make when the rules are broken. And that's the game board we've got ahead of us. So that's why I'm like, yeah, man, freaking UBI would be excellent, but it is not strategically viable yet.
Yeah.
From my perspective. But anyway.
And Kevin also said, I get that. 100% have no issues with that. Been on SNAP in the past myself, here in Cincinnati, Ohio, at a place called Findlay Market. Oh, so this is the same. If you buy fruits and veggies from their vendors with EBT, they double it. So if you buy $10 worth of tokens with EBT, they give you $20. This is a great thing. Would love to see more of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it goes right back, Rene, to what you were talking about, because if you are already on Medicaid and you are probably working a very demanding job that doesn't pay very much, and so you get home from work, and I've had plenty of days where I'm like, I can't stand the thought of cooking right now. Not only can I not stand the thought of cooking right now, but how much cheaper is it to pull a frozen pizza out of the freezer than it is to make a fresh one? Like, there's a huge difference in those two things. And so first of all, your dollar goes further if you buy the crap food. And that is just a awful reality. Even with that matching part, your dollar is still going to go further on a frozen pizza than it is to making your own. And then second of all, there's the energy level and the fact that our society today, I did not realize this was going to be such a fucking soapbox stream. I was not anticipating this.
You bring me on to talk about welfare policy. This is where it happens. So I'm for it.
It's good. But also it's just, if you're already working this job that is very low paying and very high demanding, the energy level is not there. And also your hours are probably shit. So if you're working something where you're dropping your kids off in the morning, picking them up in the afternoon, and then driving to work and working for the evening shift or whatever at McDonald's or something like that, you don't have time to make a dinner for them. You have time to fix something in the microwave, fix something in the oven, maybe, but not necessarily time to fix something else. Also, you have to think about how much meal planning do you have to do? How much of that kind of coordination do you have to do? It goes into a whole other level of stuff that you have to plan for that you probably don't have time to plan for. Yeah.
Person with chronic illness, having to clean up any of that is like a lift that is not possible for me.
Yeah.
On most days, it just isn't. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into this, and to that point too about stretching the dollar, going to a farmer's market and getting a matched dollar for dollar is still bougie farmer's market prices.
Yeah.
Even with a basically 50% off on this bag of lettuce, it's still $3 compared to my 98-cent iceberg from Walmart.
Yeah.
So I have that love of how it can be used, but then the reality of the actual impact and the way it gets implemented. So, to that, I don't know if we want to go straight into how I use that for the game that I've made about this, because I was going to say this is exactly what I'm looking to have happen whenever we're running a budgets and benefits campaign, is this exact conversation.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about kind of the advocacy piece of it, because I want to make sure that we give that enough space here. So, when we talk about advocacy practices, because this will tie into that budgets and benefits piece, but what are some of those advocacy practices for poverty and disability, real world?
I think I've taken a bit of a guerrilla approach to that, and I'm not sure if I'm using the phrase as accurately, as correctly as I'd like to, but I did not pursue traditional advocacy pathways. I found a lot of nonprofits or a lot of communities really focused on advocacy weren't very safe for me to be in. I have a lot of social anxieties tied around being very specific about the way I communicate with people sometimes, and about how I need to be communicated with. Usually, like, if groups that are focused on advocacy are not additionally trauma informed, and then may speak in certain stigmatizing or stereotyping ways about the folks they're trying to help, I cannot share that space. I just cannot share that space. And that can make it very difficult to do collaborative work with people. So I had to take a lot of time to learn how to practice advocacy with others, and would do so via like online forums more than anything. So I would find, places on Reddit to just start having discussions and start sharing information. I find that is one of the most important advocacy practices, is just having one-on-one conversations with people that you meet in the moment. We like to think these big sweeping collective actions are the only way to make change happen, but I don't find change sustains itself in the wake of a big sweeping collective action. I find a lot of the people wind up kind of lost in the aftermath. So some of the advocacy practices I focus on are kind of integrating into nonprofits and other groups with the purpose of, like, I don't know, helping them reevaluate how they're organizing and structuring themselves around the work, how they're talking about their work, how they're using language to shape their work. Because the way we tell stories is incredibly important. And I certainly don't mean to say we should be tone policing or grammar policing people but when they're telling stories. That's not at all what I mean. Certainly trying to deconstruct a lot of the field, the behavioral healthcare field's language. A lot of that diagnostic language has some unfortunate ways of mischaracterizing the human. Those, I'm sorry, I'm kind of straying because my advocacy practices just aren't very clear. I just show up and respond to something in the moment to the person that I'm encountering. It's not too much of a random person on the street encounter with me, but I will kind of email people at this or that think tank or organization. I will tweet at someone randomly with an intense question about what they're doing and start the conversation that way, and try to turn tides by those individual conversations, one after the other, over and over again. And so that now actually is leading into me having more collective action impact, where I'm speaking to larger groups of people rather than one-on-one. And I'm doing more speaking engagements, like at conferences, at tags, and I'm also spoke with some forums with Code for America and things like that. So doing the small one-on-one work was the brick by brick foundation for doing the next level. And I'm hoping that next level, goes up even more. And the next setting I'll be in is a congressional committee hearing, telling them some stuff behind that microphone. We'll see. And not me or anybody talking about this stuff, but I definitely have a lot to say. So
how did you go from, your own personal experiences, how did you decide to step into that peer support for others role? What prompted you to kind of get there?
Experience of people letting me advocate for myself appropriately, for just hearing me after I would push and push and push for how a certain need of mine needed to be met. And this would often be, telling therapists, like, I know you said that we need to meet weekly, but I can't meet with you weekly, or if they were practicing a certain kind of therapy and it was not beneficial for me, I would be able to just speak to them about that and say that this is not okay. So for so many of those times where somebody should have advocated for me and didn't, I still experienced a lot of places where people made space for me to advocate for myself. And a lot of people have, I would say, I want this, it sounds shitty to put it this way, but they've kind of humbled themselves. Like when I've shown up waving a finger about something in a fucking mood about it, because I'm so tired and I'm so fatigued by these stupid problems that we have with our system. Like they are so ridiculous the deeper that you get into it. How could you not wake up angry every day about these? So anybody who has just held space for my anger and let me turn it into advocacy instead of it just staying anger, that's really what showed me what other people need and what I want to help other people have. I want to make space for their anger, not for rage. I want to make space for that, like the righteous indignation of like, are you kidding me that you're doing these things? You're making these plans? You're talking about the policy this way. If you would just sit down and listen to me for 5 fucking minutes, you would not write the policy that way. You would literally not write the policy that way if you just knew, or, whatever it is. So that's what I want. I want to make space for those really painful stories to rise up.
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly, I feel like this is a no duh kind of question, but does what you have lived through help you relate to others in some way? And have there been times where your experiences and background have really helped you connect with other people?
Is the job. That's the job, is actually learning about yourself enough to reach for those places where you find a connection with every single person that you meet, that capacity is there. And I think that is something I love so much about the work, is when I'm in a room with somebody, even if there's somebody that has more privilege or more power or more money than me, I know how to recognize lived experience connections. That's part of the training of motivational interviewing and strength-based modeling. I don't care who, I mean, part of the traits of my particular alphabet soup, I don't recognize things like hierarchy very well. So like, it doesn't matter who I'm in a room with, their role or their title isn't going to mean much to me. Just who they are as a person is going to be what impacts how I behave around them. I mean, in most cases, when I'm just with another human being, I understand at least enough about my human experience that I know there's a connection there. I know there's a connection. I've had to learn so that I can trust people again and be around them again. There's a way to make a connection with everybody. And that's been really, really powerful to model that for others and then see them sort of recognize that too, in some of the areas that I've brought peer support work in, where it's needed and necessary. And they're like, oh, right, I also have lived experience. That's really empowering for people to realize that their pain counts, even if they also experience privilege or power, maybe even more so than their pain. Still, it counts. So.
Yeah. So after your own experiences with all of this and these social systems, you decided to create a game designed to help disabled people experiencing poverty advocate for the support they need and navigate their system of care. Tell us about Budgets and Benefits.
Dun, 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 dun. Well, It's a big buildup for not much material, though. I have to say that.
It's okay.
If you do follow any of my socials, you'll eventually make it to my like Patreon or my webpage, and you can see a little bit about it there. But as a game, it is styled like a one shot, one day, one campaign kind of tabletop role playing game. I borrowed heavily from my upbringing, longingly looking through my dad's D&D books and not being allowed to play them.
No.
And yeah, I know it's super sad, but okay, I did eventually get to do lots of other role playing games. So I came to the game piece of the development after trying very hard to play it straight for a while, and just show people how I was using spreadsheets to calculate multiple benefits welfare cliffs because my family was on so many different, and they all had different rules, all measured income differently, all had different cutoffs, and I needed some way to survive on a week-to-week budgeting basis, and know what the months ahead might hold for me. So I kept trying to take this tool that's very real, very functioning, very sophisticated, except for, I mean, it doesn't look sophisticated, but like it was, I did some work on that back end. And I kept trying to take this straight up tool, this straight story of just this like really hardcore kind of thing to different people, different, like, are you my mother? Are you my mother? And nobody was able to really respond to it because it was just so much. It was so complex, and it was so like hard to see like what good could my very specific calculator be for like anybody else. You'd have to deconstruct so much of it. So along the way, I started to try and simplify this tool into something more and more simple every time I came back to it. And eventually, I started to try and use it in different like group settings. Psychosocial rehabilitation classes is what Medicaid calls them, which is when we teach people who have frequent hospitalizations what they need to learn to live life, or what have you. It's pretty condescending setup, unfortunately. But I was really eager to bring the budgeting tool that I had as a coach to folks, where I was like, hey, I'm going to teach you something that's really real for you. Like, this is real stuff. This isn't like making like a budget based off of like myfinances.com or whatever. This is for you. And it just wasn't landing. Like, people are like, I know, but it's so much. So then I kind of threw away all of the one-on-one stuff and just stripped it all down to just a game that we would play around one character. And we'd all kind of like roll dice to make up the demographics of that character, which programs they were on, whether or not they had a job, or if they had children, or, what their vitals were that we would then plug in. And through the simplification into that kind of a format, it was suddenly that much more interesting for all of us to have conversations about it, because it wasn't tied to our actual benefits that our lives depended on. Like, we weren't discussing this incredibly difficult traumatic thing that our life could depend on. We can't tolerate all of that weight, but when talking about it for just this one character who isn't real, for all of these different rules that don't have anything to do with our lives, it really allowed people to like absorb what they were experiencing while they were watching like the numbers change as we would roll the dice and take the character through each week of their budget and the reality of their benefits. And so that was a game changer for me, where I was like, oh, I've been trying to do this like super clever, smart thing, and no, I just need to like have total fun, just make it total fun. And I should have known that from all of my other work in developing my own self-care, which is based around having fun, because I'm so rules oriented that I don't, give myself the break to have fun. One of the biggest things we probably learn of parents who have children that need care as well is just sit down and play games with them. Just sit down and play games. It cures so much. So that was my big moment of like, oh, okay, it's not a fancy, super fancy tool or whatever. It's a game, which is still fancy. but it's a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what has the response been to that game so far? How's it been going?
There's a lot of interest, and that's really great. I have not been able to match that interest with materials as yet, although I should be able to ramp up into that over the next few months, which is why I went ahead and started up the Patreon and have some more space for it on my website coming up too as well, and we'll be able to share more about it upcoming. But yeah, I've had to take a step back so that I could play games to learn from some of those games what I can use to make this one more straightforward and fun. Because that was the response that I had was like, this is capturing so many complexities and can be used for so many advocacy outlets, which is a great thing. I do want that, but I really do want it for recipients to learn about their own programs too. And so that's still a piece of it that isn't quite clicking, in that it's just so heartbreaking to work through these things for folks, you know? So I really want to find some way to help the recipients who would benefit from the empowerment that they could get from this game, learning about what their rights are and what the rules are and what they can ask and demand for, you know? But there's so much fatigue. So yes, great. I'm glad the advocacy angle is, and the advocacy people are really responsive to it. I need their help making it more accessible for the people who need it most. Yeah, so that's. I'm really thankful that everybody who has either played it or talked with me about it understands the importance of it, even if the complexity is really difficult to grasp. They're like, this is absolutely necessary. So yeah.
And you play tested it at tags, right? How did that go? I don't have your presenter. I meant to grab your presenter.
Oh yeah.
Page.
My page, I have not tended to my presenter page in the aftermath of tags. I got a job.
That's okay.
That didn't last for very long right after tags. But yeah, I play tested it at tags, which was the first time I play tested it as a game form. And that was very illuminating in that it needs to be way more fun. It just needs to be way more fun. And that comes with me having a more understanding of how to make a game more fun in a very encapsulated way, and really tightening the lens on certain things instead of letting the character building and the world building be so kind of like free form. I really need to shape it around like the child tax credit kind of rules, or like the 1996 welfare reform kind of story. It needs to have a tighter lens and a tighter story so that it's more fun. But there's that part of me is like, no, it has to be like super up to date. It has to be super specific to all of the rules straight up, because it has to be a pure functioning tool, not a game. So I just need someone to talk me down from the rule-based thing and have more fun.
Yeah, and I mean, things like tags are a great way to do that, right? Because you get a bunch of people, and especially with tags being centered around the therapeutic aspects of things, and also being a bunch of gamers. Look, it's great.
It was really awesome. It really gave me the like confidence boost that I needed to understand how messy a game can be to just get it started.
Yeah,
I'm not someone who feels like things can be messy, and when you start them, everything has to be just so. But it helped me kind of like break away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I will find your. I know I have it somewhere. I'll find your presenter link, and I just opened the wrong thing. And add it to the other links that we have too. But when you set out to create this game and with this idea for this game, you weren't experienced in game design and development, right? How and where did you even start learning?
I definitely wasn't experienced in any formal way. My own personal gaming history is very specific to text-based writing games, especially text-based writing games of the early 90s. And so developing plots and storylines for those games is as close as I've gotten to development. And so certainly walking into this idea, I'm very tempted to go deep diving for all of the theory and research about how to develop a game and what mechanics to use. How do you balance it out? How do you just everything just so? I mean, I'm recalling now in some of my earlier research, I've got probably a folder full of a bunch of links about role-playing game mechanics, like just the general breakdown of all the different systems and everything. But that's how I get into it, is I just Google things and have conversations with people and try to figure it out from there. I'm pretty resourceful when it comes to doing things that way, just sort of like smashing things together and pushing it through. Yeah, that probably then led me to looking for like civic tech developers or organizations that were trying to marry the social safety net with the recipients having like access and understanding of how they worked. Because I knew that no matter what, well, this didn't start off as a game. So much of my work that now informs the game comes from all of this deep policy, like I needed to know what was in the program manuals describing every algorithm because I needed my tool to be like pure and functioning correctly. That's maybe not as necessary as a game now. So now I'm trying to find safety tools that help me develop the characterization that we need in a role-playing game. Trying to find anti-racist and anti-ableist ways of talking about these things, because so much of the language that I'm borrowing comes from policy. It comes from the body of work and social work that is very punitive and very wrapped up in white supremacy. So that's a lot of where my game development now is more in the more on that side of things. I don't know that I'm ever going to get to a space where I can do like the crunching numbers kind of game development on this. So that's where it's like I'm throwing that out into the universe anytime I can. If anybody out there is a super big nerd for game mechanics and comparing which game system acts this way towards this and that and what have you, I need it, because I do need a game system that can account for the impact of disability and something like financials, like resource management, and like health management systems and things like that. So I'll take any suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had a suggestion for you, but I do not. Sadly.
That's fine.
Everyone here already knows probably, but I am the kind of like I'm a technologic black hole. If you want to test something to see if there's going to be a problem with it, that's when you hand it to me, because I'll find the problems with it without even trying. Right. Stuff just goes wrong. Right. Related to anything technology. If you hand it to me, it's going to go bad. So that's not always a good thing, but
for me with games, the last time that I was successful at playing a game was like Super Mario Brothers. That kind of like the 8-bit Nintendo. So there's a part of me that kind of makes fun of me for even attempting to make a game, because like you don't even play games. I mean, I like them and I would play them. I just there's just so many things that get in the way of it. But I at least play this game.
Yeah, I mean, don't lose that passion, that confidence. It's really important, and that's what it takes to get something like this done. I think that just because you aren't a huge, day in, day out gamer, doesn't mean that this isn't a really awesome freaking passion project. So kudos to you for getting it this far, for sure. What has been the biggest challenge for you during the creation of this game, and what's kind of been your biggest yay moment?
Thanks. So biggest challenge is just definitely getting folks who are interested beyond like encouraging support, which requires someone else having a lot of passion for it. And this is a difficult this is a difficult kind of issue to have a lot of passion about making a game for it. There's a lot of passion around helping, provide a research item or this or that. But that one of the biggest challenges has been finding those who kind of understand the need and the nuances both. There's no way to know so much of this unless you've lived it. There just isn't, and there's no way to like hurry up and catch somebody up to a lot of that either. So that's definitely the most difficult, but the biggest win is definitely when it works, when it really teaches somebody something. We were playing a game with a group in a psychosocial rehabilitation class. We'd created a character. We were playing along her story. And one of the clients spoke up and said, "Hey, wait a minute. We made this character. She's got all of this. This is all her stuff. But like, this is me. This happens to be me, but I don't get the amount of SSI payment that she gets. Why don't I get that amount?" And when we took a look at her specific situation, her case manager had not updated the Social Security Administration, that she had moved and was paying rent. And when you receive SSI, if you live somewhere and you don't pay rent, SSI takes a third away from your payment because they count you receiving in-kind support and maintenance as reason to reduce your payment. The minute that you start paying rent, though, they give that amount right back to you. No matter what it is, you get a letter that says you. So, this game helped the client realize, like, wait, something's not right with my benefits, and then B, it helped her realize that her case manager should have known that and did not know that.
Yeah.
Which then the case manager and that whole team were like, we just don't know that, which then reveals to you, like, where's your training, case managers? A whole team of case managers doesn't know something that is like knee-jerk to, I don't understand that. I don't understand that. And that's the hooray moment for me, is it just revealed a very, very huge miss for a client that they were able to correct, right? Like get it corrected. Not immediately, because it's the Social Security agency. It still took 3 months, but at any rate, they were able to get right on the ball correcting it, fully understood, and was never going to have that ever happen to them again, because they understood it in their bones they were never going to have that happen to them again. And it revealed how an entire behavioral agency's entire case management team did not understand a very basic fact of a job they're supposed to be doing. That's their whole job, is to maintain clients' connections with their services and to make sure they're getting the full services that's their entire job.
Yeah. And you don't know, maybe they went back and said, oh, well, we can apply this to these other 5 people. You'll never get that side of the story, but
I know I was working for them at the time. I do know that they didn't, but that's still one of those moments that keeps me, in belief that this game has a lot of potential.
Absolutely.
As it is. And so that's why I'll keep plugging away at it, even if it's just spreadsheet slides for right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Scarlett said, I can play games, but I sure can't make them. Same. There's no way. There's no way I could make a game. So everybody has their strengths, and you found yours in creating this one. So you tried out different organizations to kind of help you on your games journey, right? What has your experience been with some of those various companies and organizations?
Real varied experience trying to integrate myself as like this, just I don't know, I'm just unconnected, an unconnected person just floating into all these spheres. And it's much like the response that I've had one-on-one, where people are like, this is great, good job, don't know what to do with it. Let us know where you get with it next, and then maybe we'll figure out something to do with it then. So that's pretty frustrating and disappointing overall. And that's not quite resolved yet. There are just a lot of organizations going in a lot of different directions when it comes to resolving these issues. Many think like, let's not make it easier to understand the welfare cliffs. Let's spend all of our time and energy getting rid of them, which is really great, but like, they're not changed today. And today somebody still needs to figure out how to spend their money for the next couple of weeks. And then there's a lot of organizations who will want to build like guesstimate simulators that kind of get you some answers, but then they don't do a really good job of catching where cliffs happen. They just spit out like guesses that are just like, well, you're fine. They're not granular enough to really like show the impact. And they're also all bound by traditional hierarchical funding methods where grant money is portioned out in very specific ways. It's given to these organizations like, we're going to give you $10,000, but you have to spend 5% of it on advertising, 10% of it on payroll, 15% of it on this. And, if the money isn't in whatever bucket it needs to be in for them to just open the door to somebody walking in, they just can't do it. Even if they're sitting there going, you're so amazing. I love everything you're doing. I can't do anything with it. I am still kind of out on my own on this one, which is why I've got the Patreon. And the more that I become, more I try and integrate with these more like formal pathways, the more I find maybe they're not the fit for me. That's why I work in peer support, because traditional pathways to work don't work for me. So traditional pathways to funding may not work for me as well, and maybe things that I want to abjectly avoid. But the other thing is that I don't want to own this work solely. We live in an age where, as an artist or a creator, the things that you put out there, you want to be yours very much, and I fully understand that. But this is a kind of work at base, though, that I don't feel I can just keep. So I'm trying to find ways to give it away. I need to get paid so that I can make it, but I'm also trying to find ways to just like give it somewhere to someone to make it something else, something bigger and something more. But I will continue to keep plucking away at it on my onesies if I cannot find the good, safe, viable home that it needs. So yeah, I'm really glad for this question, because it's been very difficult. Peer support work stems from a belief that we can still make systemic change. That's why it's on just the other coin flip away from mutual aid, going, no, at scale will always be inequitable. Never make a system out of anything. Peer support's like, no. I think we can still get in there. I think we can still make systemic change. So I still believe strongly that some of these formal pathways can be broken down enough for some of us to have safe travel over them. Oh, not yet, man. I don't know.
So if you could go back and start all over, would you do anything differently?
Struggle with a question like that, because there's a part of me who wants to say, oh no, I wouldn't want any one thing butterfly effect to change, but I probably would try to consciously hurt less people.
What do you mean by that?
In a lot of my life, I perceived things that were happening in ways that weren't so. And
okay.
believe that people were treating me a certain way, and so then I felt justified treating them a certain way. And I would like to have had more insight in a lot of those moments where, like, oh, we could have preserved that friendship. Probably wasn't like this toxic, awful thing that I thought it was, because my trauma was triggered and I didn't know how else to communicate with that person through it. There's a lot of those moments where I was hurt and hurt someone else, and I would just like to have done that less, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's fair. I mean, I've definitely been in situations where it's like, listen, you messed with me and now I'm going to mess with you right back because you pissed me off. And it's like, I'm not the sadly turn the other cheek kind of person. So I'm the raise the other fist kind of person in a lot of situations, which is not the best way to be. I fully admit. But yeah, that's,
now that I have understood the best boundaries I have that I want to protect, there are just those kind of things where I'm like, wow, I was a little dramatic that one time.
Like, dramatic me
really?
never. Are there any regular habits that you either maintain yourself or that you feel like might not get enough attention? We all talk about get enough sleep and eat right and exercise enough. But is there anything that you do that you think generally supports well-being and doesn't get enough attention?
I think using a swing or like getting in a hammock and just sort of being suspended off the ground and, having your weight just sort of lifted like that. I don't know what, I mean, there are all kinds of things, I don't know those things though. There are all kinds of things that tell us why it works. I don't know what they are. I don't care what they are. I just know that they work. So I, think found like a $30 hammock and I had some space in my yard to hang it, but you can get like hooks to hang them. And so that's something that is like I found is life-changing for me this past few months is having a hammock. Just for my sense, my nervous system is so shot by trauma experiences and everything else that I go through. So something like a swing that just gets my whole nervous system completely reoriented in ways that I don't have any control over. Chef's kiss. Love it, love it, love it. That's the thing. And then I'll say I have a view on sleep hygiene that is counterintuitive to all of the best practices we're usually taught. I don't give a shit about a normal sleep schedule. Sleep when you need to sleep as much as you want to sleep. I know that's probably not grounded in best practices for health, but it is more about the embracing the power of rest. And this is work that comes specifically from somebody I follow on Twitter. Her handle is called the Nap Ministry. And in her work, she promotes rest as reparations for Black people, and then of course, for every other as an anti-capitalist move to just sort of reclaim rest and reclaim the space to move slowly and to move thoughtfully and to move with purpose. And I don't want to speak too deeply on her work as if I'm taking it, but it's been something that I embrace because napping is something I must do in order to stop my brain. I cannot manage to not nap. It's a need that I have to answer to let my brain cool down. I have a high fast processing, doing lots of stuff, really shitty fans. Like just like somebody kind of blowing on my CPU, and that's as good as it gets sometimes, So I have to shut down because so many times, even when I start right back up, I'm going to overheat the minute that I'm awake again. So I actually advocate for something other than the standard sleep schedule of like, oh, get rest only at night for this many hours and never nap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so I think it's Bite who was talking about the biphasic sleep fairly recently in the Discord server, and the fact that she'll go to bed at odd hours, but then she does take a decently long nap during the day to kind of try to catch up. I'm awful about not getting enough sleep, but then on weekends I do nap, and whenever I get the chance, I will take a nap because I'm like, all right, there is a baseline amount of sleep that your body needs, and sometimes you just can't get it at night when you're supposed to be sleeping. And so you got to get it during the day, like however you're going to get it, you got to get it. I opened up the Nat Ministries Twitter, and their pinned tweet is daydreaming is a form of rest. And I absolutely love that.
Treat.
It's wonderful.
I definitely encourage consuming a lot of the Nat Ministries content. It's revolutionary.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. I mean, I put the link into the chat for you.
Good.
Scarlet Lady says, I felt that. Yes, absolutely. So it's time now for our magic moment. And I have a fancy pants magic wand right here, and I'm going to turn it on in a moment, and I'm going to wave it. And when I wave it, you get to eliminate one common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health. So I'm just going to turn this on. Well, I thought I wasn't going to turn it for a second. What are you eliminating today? And there we go.
Okay, I am eliminating the belief that the Social Security Administration determines disability when it approves or disapproves benefits. That's a deep in the weeds one, but when it approves benefits for SSDI or SSI, people usually think, oh, that means I'm officially disabled. And when it disapproves it, they go, I guess I'm not disabled. Social Security Administration is not investigating whether or not you are disabled. It is investigating whether or not you are unemployable because of your disability. So it's approving or denying your unemployability as a disabled person. You are disabled. If you say you are disabled, that is it. And so much of our discourse around who gets to call themselves disabled or not kind of comes down to these little like slice and dice. Well, do you get a benefit? Did the Social Security Administration approve you for disability? Well, then you're disabled. Or, well, then you're not disabled. Or, oh, if you're disabled, you must automatically get that benefit. So I would like to wave that one. It's a deep cut kind of one, but I think it would do subtle things bubbling up.
Absolutely. I mean, that is one of those things that a lot of the time a disability is not visible. Whenever a disability is not visible, you get all kinds of shade thrown at you because your disability is not visible. And it's like, man, shut up. You don't know.
Right.
In so many situations. Well, I'm going to open up chat. If you guys have any other questions, please go ahead and pop them in there. And then Renee, I'll just open it up to you and see if there's anything we didn't talk about or any resources you want to throw out there. I will post your links again. And I added your tags page to that. So let me post those links one more time. And then I'll just say, talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Thanks. I'm really always glad for an opportunity to talk about welfare policy, particularly because it can get so contentious and people are like, well, we can't talk about politics because we can't get along. We still have to talk about policy sometimes, and these are very important policies to talk about. So I'm grateful for any kind of space about it. I mean, I definitely have a lot of strong opinions and a lot of I'll pull out a quote from somewhere to back it up too, but I'm always interested in hearing what other people's ideas are about what a social safety net should look like. It is up to us to kind of understand, what our lives and our communities need, and to try and communicate that, upwards as best we can to make these improvements that impact us coming back down the pipe again. So I just always welcome anyone to reach out to me if they've got ideas or if they've got stories that they think would make a really interesting scenario to sort of test through or play test through. I want to be careful to not appropriate anybody's intellectual or creative property or their personal stories. So to that end, I would be pursuing that kind of a connection with anyone very carefully. Especially when it comes to like just, anonymizing any kind of pieces or maybe just using one part of that story rather than the whole thing. Not trying to have anyone feel like they're Kramer selling all of his stories to Jay Peterman. But I do love to listen to what others are going through. So.
Yep. So you can reach out. There's a bunch of different websites: Twitter, TikTok, Patreon, Hey Peers. All of those. I don't know if your tags page has contact information. It probably does, but
it's bare bones. God bless him for being patient with me while I have not updated that. And Yeah.
I haven't updated mine on there either, but I mean, I did send them like everything beforehand. I was like, here's all my stuff, here's all my links. So I actually don't know that I've gone to my own presenter page tags. That's probably awful because I've been to so many other people's, but yeah, I haven't updated anything either. So we're in the same boat.
Okay. I won't feel guilty.
Not at all. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, chat. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the engagement. I will be back in just a little bit playing some Minion Masters in RuneScape. Rene, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us.
All right. Thank you for having me. I really appreciated the time. Have a good one, everyone.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I hope you found Rene Joy's insights as enlightening and thought-provoking as I did. Reflecting on our conversation about poverty, disability, advocacy, and game development, it's clear that these issues are not just topics for discussion, they're challenges that many face daily. Rene's dedication to using her experiences to drive systemic change reminds us all of the power of personal narrative in shaping policy and perception. As we wrap up here, I encourage you to take a moment to think about how you can apply what we've talked about today in your own life. Maybe that's advocating for more accessible spaces in your community, supporting local initiatives that empower individuals with disabilities, or simply challenging stereotypes when you encounter them. Your engagement also matters, so if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the show, leaving a review, sharing it with a friend who might benefit from these conversations or who might enjoy them. Your support helps me continue bringing you meaningful content and amplifying important voices. Remember, you can connect with me on social media to share your thoughts. You can drop suggestions for future topics, or you can just say hello and connect. I'm MommaFoxFire everywhere, and I absolutely love hearing from folks, so please do come find me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.